So because we're in webinar mode, we don't have a chat facility, we have the Q&A. So I will start with introductions as people are joining. We've got 89 here so far. I think we'll probably get a few more join. As I just said, there's 208 people registered for this grant scheme, and we're quite excited. This is going to be big, in some ways anyway, in terms of interest. So my name's Ant Parsons. I work with Oxlet Business. I'm the host for today. I'm also working with the team that's running the grant program. So I will be here to help answer questions, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that this grant scheme runs as fluidly as possible, and that people are able to get the grants and have a real impact on their business in Oxfordshire. You'll see we've also got Helen Brind here. I'll introduce Helen in a minute, and she's going to be talking to us about some of the support, and James Rule, who's also going to talk through some of the mechanics of the application process and some of the rules and regulations. And you'll get to know James very well because he's also recorded a 1-hour webinar, which we'll ask you all to watch separate from this. So that is going to be available online. And you can also see that there are two other people here, Leslie and Liz. So they're the magicians in the team who make all of this possible, and they're going to be helping to answer questions and capturing any of those questions so that they can go into the frequently asked questions that we put on the website. So just in case any of you are really desperate, I'll get to the chase. You cannot apply for this grant during this call. It is not yet live. So please concentrate and listen to our presentations, and then as you get to the end, you'll find out what you need to do, but you cannot apply while we're talking. So please spend the next half an hour or so listening. Right, I'm going to share my screen with the slides, and then we will get going. So hopefully you can see my slides. Not yet. Zoom, share screen. Hopefully you can see my slides now. Yes, you can. Brilliant. And I can see James and Helen there. So if they get locked up at any point, if you could wave your hands and let me know. So welcome to the Business Investment Fund. This is the launch webinar, but as I say, you cannot be applying now. It's not fully launched yet. You'll hear more about that in a moment. And what I'd like to do before I get into the detail of the fund, just tell you we're going to cover some of the wider things around Oxlet Business's support, because at the moment we know there's a lot of challenges for businesses, and it's really important that you know what we've been doing and what we've got available. So Helen is going to tell you all about that. I'm going to then go into the grant scheme and start on the grant scheme next steps, and then I'm going to pass over to James to continue with the grant scheme next steps, and then we'll have questions. And we should be talking probably for 20 minutes at most, and we'll give lots of time for questions. So that's why you're here. As I say, listen carefully. There's lots of amazing information. So I'll go on mute. Helen, over to you. Helen, can you hear? We can't hear you, Helen. Do you want to unmute? And it won't let you unmute. It won't let you unmute.
I've managed it. Sorry, I thought you were going to unmute. Sorry, Anne. Morning, everybody, and welcome. Great to see so many faces here this morning on this webinar to launch our the Business Investment Fund, as Ant just said. We are here today to launch the Business Investment Grant opportunity. What I would say is this will be the final opportunity for the Business Investment Fund. Some of you may remember that we originally launched BIF, as we lovingly called it last year, in March 2021, and we had a grant pot of 2.1 million. We have been given the opportunity to relaunch BIF now, but with a small grant value of 220k. So not the levels that we had previously, but we felt it's invaluable at these difficult times to make sure that we're getting as many grant opportunities out to Oxfordshire SMEs. So this is the latest grant opportunity offered by Oxlet Business, where we're continuing to recognise our commitment to supporting Oxfordshire, the Oxfordshire business community. I'm pleased to say, looking back slightly, that Since May 2021, my team has awarded in excess of 4.5 million in grant funding opportunities, which is translated into £10 million worth, in excess of £10 million worth of project costs. This is alongside a significant amount of business support, which we've offered through mentoring, peer networks, webinars, one-to-one support, etc. And in the last 12 months alone, we've provided over 6,000 hours of support. We've engaged with 1,500 Oxfordshire SMEs, and we've provided in excess of 1,200 hours of one-to-one support through our team of specialist advisors. And that support will continue during these challenging times for SMEs. We have at our disposal a team of 22 specialist advisors who are supporting us through a series of activities, including webinars, etc. So that's just to really touching on the support that we've been providing, and we will continue to provide moving forward. What I would say to you is, if you haven't actually completed our business support triage tool, please do. We will share those details with you as we go through this webinar. It only takes you 7 minutes to complete, and it asks you a series of questions to help you focus in terms of what support you're looking for and areas you're looking to develop. And you will receive a bespoke business plan that will come back to you talking about the supports available through us, what's available locally and nationally. But that is your main way of finding out about what we actually provide through Oxlet Business. So going back to this fund, what do we anticipate it being? I'm only going to touch on this a little bit. In terms of, we're anticipating the fund will be used for businesses to accelerate investment plans, rebuild operations, developing marketing opportunities. Recipients of the fund are likely to be expected to harness opportunities for technology adoption and innovation, as well as supporting a transition to net zero. And just to touch, I guess, back on the previous scheme that we offered, it might help in terms of your thinking, in terms of the type of projects that we support or have supported in the previous rounds. So in the last round, we supported 36 businesses across a variety of sectors across the county, and the support was fairly evenly distributed just across the district teams. And by that, I mean across Southern Vale, Cherwell, etc. In terms of the kind of projects we saw, there was, it just gives you a snapshot. There was equipment, manufacturing equipment and R&D, and other eligible costs. The key thing, which we will go into a later date, is that this is a capital project, but what we can't do unless that project has got, we can't look at anything that needs planning permission. So that's one thing to be thinking about in terms of what you're looking at. Some examples of some projects we supported previously. We supported an organisation called ES Precision. Bit of a definition on what that was for. So this was about a laser system for fine erosion cutting methods, aiming to support the development of cells in hydrogen economy. The key part of this project was about clean energy drive to reduce emissions and fight climate change. Another organisation some of you may know because you may buy their product is Jericho Coffee Traders, and we supported them to purchase their equipment to increase productivity and research new products. And one other example would be an organisation called Green Unit, and this was a project around developing eco-friendly modular sustainable buildings with a slightly different twist to it, with around unique curved structures to mimic natural landscapes. So that was just to give you an example of some of the projects that we supported in the last round. And just a reminder, and I'm sure Ant will say it anyway again, is please make sure if there's one thing you do today, complete the business support tool to find out more about the support that we offer through Oxlet Business. Thanks, Ant, back to you.
Brilliant. Mute, you have done fantastic, great. So who can apply for a grant? Well, you're all hoping that I'm going to say you can all apply for this grant. I hope that is the case. There's 125 people on this call now. So who can apply for a grant? First off, you have to be an Oxfordshire business and you have to have been trading in Oxfordshire for 2 years. So if you didn't start your business until January 2021, you won't be eligible. You have to have been trading in Oxfordshire since before November 2020. So we'll see if we get a drop off, but that's what you need in terms of eligibility, number one. If you secured a BIF grant in the first BIF grant program, unfortunately, we won't be able to support you again through this. So Helen mentioned a few companies there. If you're on this call, unfortunately, we can't support you again through this program. And then finally, if you've applied for the Visitor Economy Grant, so what we call VEG, if you've applied for VEG in the last few weeks, because we've been running that grant program, then if you are successful with your VEG application, you won't also be able to have a BIF grant. But that's complicated because you don't know whether you're going to be successful with your VEG application or not yet. So if you have applied for VEG, then there's no reason why you shouldn't apply for BIF as well. And that's up to us then to manage to make sure that you don't get both grants, but you won't get both grants. So hopefully that makes sense. If you've got questions around this, please do put it in the Q&A so that we can try to answer them. How much can you apply for? Well, this grant program, I think Helen did say £220,000 in total we've got to give away, but that's not for any one business. It's grants of £5,000 through to 24,999. That's not 25,000, that's 24,999. There is a reason for that. James will come back and cover that later, no doubt. But you must be able to cash flow your grant. I've put this in red. So what that means in simple terms is you're going to need to spend your £24,000 if that's what you apply for, and then claim it back. And you'll get it back within good time, but it's not going to come back into your bank within 2 or 3 days. So you must be able to afford to spend that money and then demonstrate you've spent it and claim it back. This is for capital costs only. In the FAQs, we do give you some examples of capital. In our eligible projects that James will cover, we give you some examples of capital. But ultimately, if you're not sure whether what you're planning to spend it on is capital or not, then you must speak to your accountant, because the accountant will be able to read the HMRC guidebook, the 250 million words, and tell you whether what you're planning to spend it on is capital or not. In some cases, it's very straightforward. In terms of software and technology, it can get more complicated. You do not need to put in any match funding. So unlike the previous BIF scheme, unlike many of the other grant schemes that you will have seen, there's no match funding requirement. So if you have a project of £20,000, you can get a grant for £20,000 for that. That doesn't mean that you can't apply for a grant for part of a bigger project, but we don't need you to do that. If you do spend more, then no single supplier can be above 24,999. There's a procurement rule here, which is what's providing this ceiling. But if you've got a project of £50,000 that you're going to be spending with one supplier, then this grant cannot support that. And your business must be viable. Unfortunately, this isn't a business recovery scheme. This is not a help you get through the winter scheme. This is an invest in your business and invest in your future scheme. So if your business is already going south and struggling, then please do engage with Oxlep. We want to help you, but that's not what this grant scheme is primarily about. This is about investing in your business's long-term future. But have a conversation with us and we can see what we can do to help. And you must spend and claim the money by the 17th of March, 2023. Now, I know this isn't the most exciting slide. I've got no pictures here, but these things are all really, really important, which is why I'm labouring them. If your project is not going to deliver and finish in time for you to get your claim in by the 17th of March, this isn't the grant scheme for you. Okay, so what sorts of projects are we looking for? This is just a very brief touch on just some examples. So the first one there, investment in and refurbishment of buildings, plant, machinery and equipment. Now, there is a caveat to this. If you're talking about doing something to your building and it needs planning permission, if it's a big construction project, it's not really sensible because this is a grant scheme. You're going to have to spend the money in basically 8 to 10 weeks. And most construction programs at the moment are getting delayed. Problems with materials, problem with suppliers, etc., etc. So it's probably worth avoiding anything to doing with your building. But new capital items, new 3D printers, new equipment that allows your business to enter a new market, special software that allows you to enhance what you do already, thinking about how you refurbish or improve the equipment you've got, thinking about green tech, clean tech, building back better. That one at the bottom there, we've left this quite broad and open, but we're looking for ambitious proposals, assets that will support connectivity between more than one business. What does that mean? We're not going to tell you. You've got to work that out. If you can come with a brilliant idea around an asset that can be shared between businesses, that can help think about how Oxfordshire businesses can work together, then please do put that in and apply. So this is coming towards the end of what I'm going to say. That link there, oxletbusiness.co.uk/business support/business-investment-fund. That is the one you've all been waiting for. That is where the guidance sits. That is where the FAQs sit. That is also where the pre-registration form sits. So we are launching this grant scheme today. However, we don't want a fastest fingers first competition and have everybody applying by lunchtime. We want you to have a few days to think about this. So there's a pre-registration. It's basically your name, your email address. Are you eligible or not? And if you answer those questions, then what you'll get is a button to download a template of the application form. So you can download the Word version of the application form and you can start building your application. On Monday morning, Monday the 14th of November at 9 a.m, we will email everybody who has pre-registered with the link to apply. It's an online portal. So at 9 a.m. on Monday morning, you'll be able to take the information you've put into your Word document and populate the online portal and answer the rest of the questions, the yes, no's, the tick boxes, the drop down boxes, etc. And you'll be able to develop your application online. Now, we've done it this way, as I say, because we don't want a fastest fingers first, but we also want to make sure that, this is as fair as possible so that enough businesses get a chance to look at this, develop their bids, proposals. Now, we can't wait forever, so you've not got long. This is only 5 days you've got until Monday, but on Monday you'll be able to apply. Now, we don't know how this is going to go. I can see that we've lost a few participants, so some of the eligibility factors will have made people realise that this isn't for them. But the Visitor Economy Grant Scheme, which we've just ran, we had to close early because of the volume of applications. So you need to be prepared that although this scheme is open for a couple of weeks, it may get full very, very quickly. James will take you onto the timeline shortly. The QR code that you can see in the bottom of your screen, if you've got a smartphone with you, please do take a little snapshot of that. That will take you to the business support tool that Helen mentioned. Go to the business support tool, fill that in. That is by far the best way for you to stay in touch with the support that Oxlep's got. So for instance, sometimes grant schemes like this one get launched and then turned off very quickly because we realise something's happening and then we turn them back on. If we've got your contact details, we can communicate with you. This scheme is not going to be turned off. This scheme is going to run through, but we don't know what might come forward. In a month's time, something amazing might happen. Rishi might announce something new in terms of business support and we might have a new grant scheme. If you filled in the business support tool, we can tell you about it. If you haven't, or if you've ticked, please don't send me any marketing, then we can't tell you. So scan that QR code, complete the business support tool. If you don't want to do that, search for Google Oxfordshire Business Support Tool. It comes up, it's number 1. Okay, over to you now, James, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Ant. So I'm afraid my slides have probably even less pictures on them than Ant's do. But I'm going to take you first of all through the timescales for the BIF programme. Pre-registration is open from today. And as Ant said, it's critical to note you cannot apply without going through this stage. So only those who pre-register will receive a link to the application portal when it opens at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. Ant has already alluded to the fact that we may have to close the round early. As Helen said, there's a pot of £220,000 available as grant money If we reach £600,000 worth of applications received, we will close the round. There's not much point in continuing to take applications that we just know we can't fund because we haven't got enough money. What we will do, because you've all pre-registered, is email out to everyone on that list to update you as we hit each £100,000 threshold. So when we hit the first 100,000, we'll let you know, the second, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. If we don't close early, the application window will close on the 25th of November at 5 p.m. So anything received after that date, if we close as planned, will not be reviewed, will not be assessed. We'll then dive into a very quick assessment process. We're going to look to get this done in around about 3 weeks so that we can let you have decisions by the 16th of December, so just before Christmas. We'll follow that up with a grant offer letter in early January, so that you will then be able to start your project in January once the offer letter is received, with a view to completing it in March and then claiming as soon as possible, but at the latest by the 17th of March. And then there's a couple of weeks after that for you to share successes and case studies with us to show the impact of the grant. Next slide, please. So, as you might expect from somebody who does compliance support, I'm going to run through the eligible activities. There is an example list of this on page 4 of the guidance, which you can download from the website. I'm not going to go through every single element here because this is effectively the list of eligible activities that Ant has been through. Effectively, it is around capital investment and refurbishment. So doing up of buildings, machinery, purchase of new equipment and software, and then the wonderful assets that will support connectivity between more than one business. I'm very much looking forward to seeing what those ideas are. Next slide. Just as important are the things that you cannot spend the grant on. So what are the ineligible costs and activities? Top of the list are projects that are already underway. If you've already started something, then by definition, you didn't need the grant in order to deliver it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to start it. So a project that is already underway is not eligible. Vehicles are not an eligible cost. So there's no purchase of vehicles within this program. And clearly, we can't fund a business's working capital requirements. There's no wages or salary costs allowed within this program, and understandably, nothing that would contradict, duplicate, or undermine government domestic initiatives. So things have to be permissible under current government policy. VAT is always a bit of a vexed question. Where VAT cannot be recovered from HMRC, or where you are not a VAT registered business, then the VAT costs is an eligible part of your project costs. Oxlep cannot give VAT advice to businesses. So if you are at all unsure about whether VAT costs are eligible or not, please consult the accountant who does your VAT returns for you. You can't use the grant for anything that includes an interest element. So no repayment of debts, no refinancing, hire purchase and asset finance both include an interest-bearing element in the costs. So all of those things are not eligible. You cannot speculate with the money, so you can't purchase financial investments, stock, shares, bonds, etc. And the money cannot be used to do something that you are legally required to do. So if you have a statutory or legislative requirement to do a certain thing, to provide a certain piece of equipment, then that's not something that the grant can support. Similarly, the grant can't be used for something where there is no added value to the business. So it cannot be used for something that is just a like-for-like replacement. So if you have machine A that's worn out and you want to replace it with machine A again, exactly the same machine, just not as old, that's not something that would be eligible under the grant. There's no added value to that. There's no difference to what you as a business can do after the grant compared to where you were before the grant. Next slide. So there are really 4 eligibility principles underlying this program. No duplication, and that goes back to the point Ant made about the VEG grants and the BIF grants. We will manage that process to ensure there's no duplication. Cannot meet any statutory or legal requirements. Nothing can be double counted. So it does, if you're reporting something to this grant scheme, it needs to be attributable to this grant scheme. And there's more about that in my longer webinar about justifying how things are realistic, achievable. And as Helen said, nothing requiring planning permission. And as Ant reiterated, it just takes too long. Anything that is a major construction project will be delayed. I have yet to see one recently that hasn't been delayed, and that's going to push you beyond the 17th of March deadline, in which case we will not be able to pay the grant.
So that's the end of our broadcast on this. I see that the Q&A have been, the questions have been going very quick. One of the challenges there is that unless you ask the question, I don't think you can necessarily see the answer. So we'll skim back through some of these questions and answer them. But I'm going to ask my colleagues, Leslie and Liz, if there are any particular ones we should be picking up on.
So I've answered most of them. They've been quite straightforward. We've got one on e-cargo bike. I'm trying to get it now. So are e-cargo bikes considered as a vehicle? And I asked for a bit more clarity. Basically, not got an engine, but it's got a battery.
So when we say no vehicles, James, would we support an e-cargo bike? I guess similar to what Oxwash and we see others going around with, but a battery operated cargo bike.
So it is a battery operated cargo bike. I think probably not. And I say that because it has wheels and a propulsion system.
Therefore, it is a vehicle.
Therefore, meet the definition of a vehicle.
The next one, what about developing software, AI, stroke, analytical capability, not license purchase?
So developing software that you then use in your business, you know, connected with artificial intelligence, perhaps. Would that be capital or revenue? Is that one we want to answer, or is that one we want to ask them to talk to their accountant about?
Sorry, I dropped out at that point and had a message allowing me back in. I missed the entirety of the question, I'm afraid.
Sorry, James. Yeah, so developing software rather than purchasing software. So developing software. Have we lost James altogether?
Being recorded.
Are you still there, James?
I'm back.
Yes. So the question was, would the development of software, so with AI capability, etc., to use in the business and to expand their market, be eligible versus the purchase of some software?
Okay, so this is a question that gets to the heart of what is capital. In this context, if it is a cost that can be capitalized within your accounts, then it would be a capital cost that is eligible. So that is the acid test to it. Again, Oxlep cannot provide accountancy advice. So you need to confirm with your accountants whether the costs that you're looking at are capital costs or not. Can they be capitalized in your accounts?
Okay, thank you.
So we also have a question that is really interesting for everybody. Can we apply jointly with other business and organisations? And I responded and said yes, but they have to be one of them has to be the lead organisation that puts their details in the application form. Is that right?
James is nodding.
Yep.
So
Good.
So yeah, you can have a partnership, a relationship, but there'll be one organisation applying for the grant, one organisation receiving the money, and one organisation spending the money. So quite specific, and you'd need to work through and make sure those situations were the case. There is one here, Leslie. Could we do 2 applications? And I think you've said 1 application would be better. I think the guidance says only 1 application per applicant.
Yeah.
So work out what is your most important.
Well, they were asking a question about 2 different things. I just put it in one.
Make it 1
Make it an
application.
application.
If it is linked,
Yeah.
because this is an application for a project.
Yeah.
Not for a bundle of cash that the business can then benefit from. This needs to be a specific project that has a start, some activities and an end, and will deliver specific impacts and outcomes.
Okay, so we've got 17 questions that have come in while we've been talking about the others. So we should be able to run through these quite quickly. Do we have to tender each item we put through from 3 suppliers for the application?
So the guidance says ideally 3 quotes for your for each item. We appreciate the timescales might not allow that. What we're looking for is a quote at least, and a good explanation as to why you've not been able to get more than 1 quote. If you can't even get 1 quote, and we're not saying don't apply, but you'll need to have a really good explanation to justify why you think that cost is appropriate. We're measuring value for money, don't forget.
Yeah. So we've got a question here. My Oxman Limited company has been trading since 2019, has acquired a Kentish business, which is now relocated to Oxon. Can the parent company apply on behalf of the relocated company? I don't know the answer to that one.
James, what do you think?
The applicant company has to have been trading within Oxfordshire for at least 2 years. If you can meet that requirement, then that company can apply.
Okay. We incorporated early 2020, but didn't move into the pub to trade until November the 16th, 2020. Are we out? Can they not apply?
I think that's eligible, James. If they've incorporated, I mean, ultimately the evidence of your starting your business is the fact that you're registered with Companies House.
It is periods of dormancy would not count, but in this instance, I doubt the business was actually dormant. Given the start date quoted, I think you're fine anyway. We'd have to, at the point of closure of the round, you will have been trading for 2 years. So I think that's fine. But I think it is worth saying that if you started your business in, I don't know, 2010 and kept it dormant for 11 years, then you would not be eligible to apply for this because you would not have been trading for at least 2 years.
Okay, hopefully that helps. And then I guess the next question, can we please repeat when the business had to start trading? So I think what James has just said there is the guidance says you must have been trading for 2 years. So at the point of during this process, that is not a black and white date. That is November 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. We would massively benefit from software that will improve the design and manufacturing process and reduce waste. The cost is about 8K. Would this be eligible? Software.
Yes, if I go back, if it is a capital cost or capitalizable cost, then yes, it is eligible.
Okay.
There's another one there, James. We've been trading longer than 2 years, but changed legal status less than 2 years. So I guess I'm assuming that would mean went from a sole trader to a limited company. There's nothing in the guidance that says this is for limited companies or sole traders or anything. So that would be fine, I believe.
I think so. You would need to explain that and be prepared to demonstrate the trading history if requested.
Okay, so would pilot products runs be eligible?
Pilot
know what that is.
pilot product runs.
Yeah.
So developing your pilot product. James?
That's another wonderful compliance answer. It depends what you do with it. The reason that I say that is if we are funding the setup of your process to produce your pilot products, that would be fine. If we're funding the production, your pilot runs, if you then sell those pilot products for profit, then arguably we're covering some working capital elements, which would not be acceptable. So it depends what you're doing with the pilot products and which elements of the pilot product development we're actually funding. So this is actually a potentially quite a complicated question. If you're going to produce some pilot products and then sell them, then the production costs are effectively working capital. We would be subsidizing the production costs of products that you're selling. If you are developing pilot products and then you're going to test them and revise them and tweak them, but you don't sell them, then all of those costs would be eligible. This may be one where you need to talk to the team and ask for a bit more clarity about the detail of your project so that we can advise.
Okay. And just on that point, so in terms of questions, so following the end of this session, then please do email your questions to the email address, which we will post. We will email you all from that email address, so you have it. What we do have is, obviously lots of people are connected with Oxlep and they'll send questions all over the place, and it's very difficult for us to make sure that we haven't missed anything, and we don't want to miss anything. So there is one email address. It's businessinvestmentfund@oxfordshirelep.com, but we will share that anyway. Leslie, another one?
Yeah, so if we ask for R&D equipment for a project, we would start using the equipment right away. The project won't finish by March deadline. Are we still eligible?
Yes, the requirement is to have defrayed the expenditure and claimed it by the 17th of March. So if you've ordered the equipment, paid for it, ideally received it, all before the 17th of March, we don't necessarily expect you to have completed all your use and testing on it at that point.
Okay.
So your project from that perspective is the purchase of our R&D machinery.
Okey-doke, brilliant, thanks James. So we need some more clarity, unfortunately, on the question we asked about developing software versus license purchase. We're not quite sure what was meant when we explained it.
So this was the question about whether a software license purchase would be treated as a capital item in your accounts, or whether a software development project would be treated as an R&D capitalized item in your accounts. It is possible under UK accountancy rules to do both. You effectively have a degree of choice in the matter. As I say, I think it's critical that you talk to an accountant, because if the item is capital or capitalized, then it is within scope of the business investment fund. If it cannot be capitalized and is therefore a revenue cost, then it's not within scope.
Okay. Next question, can we use the funding to refresh our company website using a marketing agency, to hire in a designer and to revamp up our SEO?
My view is that that's definitely revenue, James. Would you agree?
I would agree. I struggle to see how that could be capitalized. So I would think that that is a revenue cost.
Is there a principle there, James? Is it if you're paying people to do something, it's usually revenue?
No, because if you run an R&D project and you pay people to build you prototypes, then that could be capitalized. And this is exactly the reason it's important to speak to an accountant, because there is guidance in the 250 million HMRC words that Ant mentioned. But of course, with all tax guidance, there are exceptions and occasional contradictions, dare I say it. So you need an expert to look at this. In my non-accountancy view, like Ant, I would fail to see that revamping a website would be an eligible cost. Certainly wouldn't be a capital cost. I can't see how you would capitalize it. So I would think it would be a revenue cost, but you'd need an accountant to tell you.
Great.
Okay, so
I think we're on Pete Moll's next one.
yeah, can we have 2 suppliers under one project? Yeah.
Yeah, no problem with that.
There was one actually where somebody asked about. It's gone now. Anyway, it's gone. We need machinery that's unavailable in the UK. It will come from Poland. It will come to 24k for the machinery. Can we include delivery costs from Poland in the grant? Well, as long as it doesn't come over 24,999. We can't spend
Yes.
any more on that.
So the delivery costs as part of a capital purchase are included as capital.
Yep.
Great.
Okay. Do you want to carry on that?
I'll cover one. So if our project, a rooftop solar PV installation on a building in a conservation area, needs local consent but not planning permission, can we apply? I think it's a grey area, Graham. What we're trying to do is to not get to a point where we've supported a project, and it sounds like a great project, but not supported a project that then you fail to be able to spend the money. And in that situation, it would be too late for anybody else to be able to spend the money, and we'd end up having to send it back to go into Rishi's coffers, which, you know, might be good for UK PLC, but it's not great for Oxfordshire businesses. So if you do not have absolute black and white permission at the time of applying to do everything that you want to do, that is a red flag for us. And therefore, it might not score as well as something that's completely got all of the green lights lined up. I see James is nodding. You'd agree?
Yeah, I would agree. It's an eligible application because it does not require planning permission. But you're absolutely right, Ant. It's a riskier project because there is an approval stage still to be sought, and that could easily be delayed.
Yeah. And interesting one next, Leslie, over to you.
Can the grant be used as a deposit for a larger machinery purchase?
No. I said, Ant is probably looking amazed that there's a very straight one-word answer from the compliance person.
You like to record that?
Yeah, you had. The reason for that is because if you're paying a deposit to somebody, you will therefore then pay the balance to that same supplier. And we've said very clearly in the guidance that no single supplier can receive more than 24,999. So assuming that your deposit is, I don't know, 10,000, 20,000, and the balance is higher than that, that would push you above the threshold.
Okay. Classic compliance person gives you a one-word answer and then feels he needs to explain it. But thank you, James. So just a couple of other points while we're here. There is another grant scheme that's open at the moment. So some of these where we're saying no, please don't think, oh my God, there's nothing we can do. So we have a grant scheme called Go Create. It's part of the Innovation Support for Business programme, which is European funded. Believe it or not, we still benefit from European funding. That grant scheme has a very narrow application window open. So there is potentially around £200,000 available through that grant scheme, similar to what we're talking about here. For the Go Create grant scheme, it must be developing an innovative product or an innovative service. So it's quite specific, but you can get a grant of a higher value, but you need to put match funding in. So you would need to contribute 40% of the cost of your project. It's a 40% match in the next round. And you could get a grant of up to £50,000. So I've not done the sums, but that's somewhere around, your project could be 80 grand and you'd get 45, 50 grand back of it. If you work out what that 40% is, 60%. So that is an avenue that's open to you. If you're interested in that, then you must get in touch with us very quickly, because again, there's a pre-eligibility check to make sure that you're going to be eligible so you don't waste your time. Then we send you the application form, and the deadline for that is the 18th of November. That is a black and white deadline, the 18th of November. But that might be an opportunity for some of you. So please, if you think that you're developing an innovative product or service, then that's an opportunity. One other thing, just to flag back into some of the slides we shared. So James said that we will close when we reach £600,000 worth of applications. And as he said, we'll let you know at 100,000, 200,000, we'll send emails out. We want to really communicate with you so that you're not wasting your time if it's full. But we will only be assessing the first £400,000 of applications initially. The remaining £200,000 are going to be on the reserve list in case the first 400,000 aren't good enough. So it's important to try and get your application in early enough to be in that first 400,000. Back to you, Leslie, for the next question.
Okay, so I sell care software. I'd like to expand to US market, need to upgrade my software and implement US compliance. Can these be funded? For me, it will be capitalized.
So if it's capitalized activity, then yes, that is eligible. If it is meeting a statutory requirement, and I suppose at this point it doesn't matter whose statutory requirement it is, then that element would not be eligible.
Okay. Would bespoke build onto an existing vehicle be eligible? It adds value to an existing chassis.
I think we said there was no vehicle purchases allowed. I don't think we specified that you couldn't renovate a chassis that you already own. So I believe that is eligible, although I'll need to look at the guidance and check exactly how we phrased it.
Okay. Would an application for the creation of marketing content be a viable proposition, and the development of a website to drive sales be viable?
I think this goes back to Ant's answer earlier. It doesn't feel capitalizable. It doesn't feel capital. So I would advise you to seek some advice from an accountant to see whether it would fit the capital definition that we have.
Yeah, okay. We incorporated our company August 2020. We've been doing R&D and developed our tech and sold one machine. Does this constitute trading?
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. So another question, how do you define trading? I've been registered in Oxfordshire for 4 years, and we deliver remote training via Zoom, Teams, and the lessons are delivered from our company address in Oxfordshire.
I think you're trading in Oxfordshire.
Yeah.
Trading in Oxfordshire, yes.
Okay, so we're looking to build a small office inside our unit to enhance our customer experience in building off-grid campus. This would include purchase of new laptops and software for us to design diagrams. Would this be included?
I think so. I mean, purchase of laptops and the software that goes on them is usually a capital cost. So yes, I think that would be eligible.
Okay.
Yeah, just on that point. So purchase of laptops would be eligible. There is a risk in a scheme like this that we get everybody just applying to get a new Mac. We'll get a new Mac each. No matter what you apply for, make sure you really emphasize how this is going to help the business, grow the market, etc., etc. So the first half of your question there, supports the second half. Make sure this is about enhancing customer experience, growing market share, etc. Like for like replacement of computers or upgrade of computers to Macs would not score very well in this scheme.
So can you clarify that the purchase may be enough to demonstrate completion, so bought and paid in full, but possibly not received it?
Yes, it would. We do appreciate that, as Ant said, there's only about 8 to 10 weeks to deliver the projects. Please bear in mind that there is an additional risk in projects that are completed, paid for, but not yet received. And that risk is what happens if you don't receive it, or what happens if you receive it and it has a big dent in it and you then get a discount, a partial refund. The issue there is that you will not then have, you will have been paid grant money that you've then been refunded, and that grant money would need to be repaid. So there is an inherent risk in here. So it's important to think about how you would manage that risk.
Okay. If an accountant says it's capital to do a web project, would you accept it? And then just underneath that, an anonymous attendee who is an accountant has basically put websites can sometimes be capitalized.
So I think the anonymous accountant attendee has summarized very neatly the issues around capitalizable items.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be. Would we accept an accountant's view that something is capitalized or capitalizable? Yes, we would.
Okay.
It would be very helpful if you provide that advice as part of the application.
Yeah.
Because that then helps those who are assessing it, to just gives them assurance that this really is capitalizable.
Yeah, the risk sits with the accountant then, because it's their professional reputation. So something like that, an email attached from your accountant saying, I confirm that this ABC will be capitalized. That makes our life so much better. Thank you.
Next question. Do you do EIS investment ?
Do we do it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah. You can't use this money as an investment in your business without a clear project that it's aligned to.
And there is an implication for EIS and SEIS schemes through receipt of the subsidy. The way the grant is awarded can have an impact on the amount of EIS or SEIS that you can then subsequently raise. This is extremely complicated, and you should definitely talk to an accountant about this. I'm not sure if that quite answers the question.
We can get that. We can do a bit more, can't we?
Yeah.
Our project is to upgrade our 3D print resource and add resilience against frequent power cuts. I assume we would apply with quotes offset by the resale value of the existing equipment. Yes? ?
So that's a very interesting question. I don't think anyone's ever asked a question like that before. So the project would be to fund the difference between the purchase cost of the new equipment and the resale cost of the old equipment. I'm going to say we'll take that one away and think about it, because that throws up some procurement issues linked to the 24,999. It throws up issues related to the single supplier. We'll take that one away, and we will answer that in the the Q&As, I think.
Okay.
There is a like for like issue in there as well, James. So
There is.
you've got
But
to
I think-
clearly demonstrate that this is not a like for like replacement, and how it would help you to increase your market, improve your customer efficiency, improve your productivity, etc., as well.
Okay, so we're looking at getting a food truck, which they're going to buy themselves. Would this grant cover the cost of all of the equipment required inside, as well as wrapping the vehicle? That's like a vehicle refurb, isn't it? And kitting out.
Yeah. So yes, it would. Not entirely sure what wrapping the vehicle would entail, but yes, the equipment, absolutely.
Okay, just stepping back. So Sylvie's asked, can you apply for both? I guess that was probably time relevant, and it's when I was talking about the Go Create grant. Can you apply for both? Absolutely, yes, you can apply for both. Go Create is revenue costs. So we're spending a lot of time here talking about capital. It's worth being aware that Go Create is revenue, whereas Business Investment Fund is capital. If you apply for both and you score well, then you present us a challenge with deciding whether we think both grants should be awarded. But that's a challenge for us to consider, not for you. So if you think it's worth applying for both, and you can separate out your capital expenditure and your revenue, those projects mustn't be linked, because we wouldn't support one where the other one fails, etc. But there's no reason in the guidance why you can't apply for both in this case. Whether you'd get both is another question.
Yeah, okay. So would bespoke build onto an existing vehicle be eligible? We've done this one, have we?
Yeah.
So we've done that one. Need to extend into my garage to further scale my business. Would this cost be accepted? So is that an extension, or will that need planning permission? I don't know.
If it does not require planning permission, it comes back to the planning permission question. If it does not require planning permission, then it's something that is eligible to be applied for.
Yeah.
You do need to have a conversation with your accountant, because if you're using your business to spend money on your home, then there might be some tax implications. So just be aware of what you're doing. And again, it needs to be capitalized.
Yeah. Will development of marketplace, mostly enhancing, be considered? Don't quite understand that one.
No, so development of marketplace sounds like marketing activity to me, which would be revenue.
It does, unless it is an electronic marketplace that is being enhanced, and then it goes back to the answer that the anonymous accountant gave. If it's website related, it might be capitalizable. So sometimes it might be. So again, if it is capitalizable, then yes. If it isn't, then no.
Okay. I'm looking at developing a recording studio to create online academy. Capital cost includes some renovation of a rented space as well as equipment. The rented space currently is on my home property. Can you confirm if this would be eligible? Very similar to what we've just said, I think, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, I think it's the same answer.
Yeah. Our business has been registered in Canada since 2019, and our services are virtual. We've had customers from Oxfordshire use our services virtually. Does this satisfy the trading eligibility criteria?
I'll give you the soft answer while James thinks about the hard answer. In the soft answer, so if your business is based outside of Oxfordshire, but you can clearly articulate that a significant, and that might be 50% or more, percentage of your trading is in Oxfordshire, then I think we'd need to consider it. But if what you're saying is that, you know, you've got clients all over the world, but you happen to know that 2 companies in Oxfordshire used your services over the last 12 months, that's probably not going to be eligible. And you can understand that in this situation, you know, that could be, we could be sending Oxfordshire business support money all over the world. That would be my thoughts, James.
That I agree with that. I have no harder answer to give.
Okay.
And that's it, I think. Oh, can you purchase demonstration stock? That's the last question.
Yes, you can, because you're not going to sell it. The issue would be if you sell it, or one of the issues would be if you sell it. The other thing you would need to demonstrate is how that is not a working capital requirement for the business.
Okay.
Okay. There's a question at the end around Go Create. So from Chris Stabal.
Oh, okay.
In the Go Create grant, it seems any expense above 5k is considered capital. Just to clarify, could we include in the proposal a capital component less than 5k, but we need more than one, and thus the total grant will be within the 5 to 2499 grant criteria? I'm a little bit confused by the question there, Cristobal. So Go Create. I don't want to talk about the Go Create guidance here. If there is questions around Go Create, then we can pick them up separately with the Go Create team. But Go Create is for revenue expenditure. James, have you got any thoughts on this?
Go Create is for revenue expenditure, but because of the regulatory definitions that we use for the funding, some things that are below £5,000 but are capital items are still classed as revenue. It gets complicated, so I'm not going to dive into the Go Create details. From the BIF point of view, everything you spend must be capital, and there is no threshold on the BIF costs to say that, you know, if it's less than £1,000, then it's not capital. You know, if you buy a laptop and it goes on your asset register because it's a capital item and it costs you 950 quid, it is an eligible BIF cost. There's no minimum threshold for that.
Okay, I'm going to draw us to a close there. We've run over in terms of time. Those eager beavers have still stayed. These are the key. This is the key link that you need. We will email everybody who signed up. I'm trying to get feedback. There we go. Thanks, Helen. So this link here is where you'll find the pre-registration form. This QR code here is where you'll find the business support tool. We are going to email all of you within the next hour. We all deserve a coffee, but then we'll email you with the links. We'll also share the slides. And yeah, I encourage you, if you believe that you're still eligible and you've got an exciting project, then pre-register and start developing your application. Do everything that you need with the Word template that you're able to download. And then on Monday morning, clear your calendar and get your application in. So I'm going to finish there. I believe Helen probably wants to say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. It's just to say thank you to everybody that's joined this webinar this morning. We do realise that the timescales are really tight on this, but with all things with funding, unfortunately, sometimes these timescales are very tight. So make sure that you read everything really clearly, understand what you're going to be putting your application for if you are. Make sure you complete the triage tool. That is how you find out about everything that's going to be happening. You know, you never quite know what's going to happen. So those that work with us for a while will have seen things have changed massively, and they change very quickly. So make sure you complete it, and good luck with your application. And thanks, Anne, for hosting us today, and James and the team at ALP. Thank you.